The Los Angeles Angels have a long history of misfortune past just losing games. From bad contracts, to wild injuries, to tragic events. It's led many fans to come to the logical conclusion that the team is cursed, even with their one-year triumph. So let's look at exactly why many believe the Angels are cursed.
Totally sports-esque. Major league.
Many curses throughout sports, especially baseball, are blamed on a certain event or a move, like the curse of the Billy Goat or the curse of the Bambino. But another popular one is stadium location. The Angels officially became a franchise in 1961, playing their games at Wrigley Field in Los Angeles. Then from 1962 to 65, they shared Dodger Stadium with the Dodgers. Then in 1966, they would move to Anaheim and play in Anaheim Stadium, while changing their name from the Los Angeles Angels to the California Angels. And once people started believing in a curse, they pinned it on where the stadium was built, with claims that it was built on a Native American burial ground, something some Buffalo Bills fans have used to explain their curse, while NASCAR fans have blamed the number of unusual occurrences and tragic events at Talladega Speedway to the track supposedly being built on an Indian burial ground. But in the 1990s, the Angels media relations director, Tim Mead, actually did research on this topic and found no evidence that the stadium was built there. But it's what happened to players in the team that has really led fans to believing in a curse, no matter an event or location. The first real reference to this post-cursed came in an article by Dick Miller in the Sporting News in 1976, with the headline that read, "Angels pitchers seem hexed. Long history of staff jinxes." This was spurred by Nolan Ryan's arm troubles that limited him to just 28 starts in 1975, the most dominant years of Ryan's long career coming for the Angels, but only seeing him making one postseason start for the team, which was in his last year with the team in 1979 and would result in the loss. But it was 1 year after the article was published that led others within the organization to believe Miller, and it's for tragic reasons. In 1977, the Angels' 23-year-old shortstop, Mike Miley, would pass away in a car crash. And since their founding in 1961, this was the fifth Angel to pass away, or almost pass away while playing for the team, or their tenure just coming to an end. In 1965, Dick Waynes passed away from an inoperable brain tumor 1 month after his Major League debut when he was just 25 years old. Then less than 2 years after playing his last season in the majors for the Angels, Manny Rojas was involved in a car accident that left him paralyzed, and would tragically take the lives of 2 of his 3 children. The Angels starting a fund to help Rojas and his family, while hosting Manny Rojas Day during spring training, with all the proceeds going to his family. Then 2 years later, after releasing infielder Chico Ruiz, just after he would sign with the Royals, and 1 month after becoming a U.S. citizen, he would pass away in a car crash in San Diego, at the age of 33, with Alex Johnson, who was traded with him to the Angels, leading to a great friendship amidst altercations, attending the funeral. Then just 2 years after, Bruce Heinechner, a pitcher who was competing for a spot on the Angels roster that year, passed away at the age of 23 during spring training in a car crash near the Angels spring training hotel. These tragic events led Angels GM Harry Dalton to say that the curse mentioned in Miller's article was the first thing he thought of when Miley passed away. And unfortunately, it did not end there. Just 1 year later, Angels outfielder Lyman Bostock was visiting family and friends in Gary, Indiana after a game in Chicago, when he was shot and killed while sitting in the back of a car at an intersection in a case of a mistaken identity. There's also the case of Donnie Moore, an all-star pitcher for the Angels, who played his last season in 1988 before playing in the minors for the Royals in '89, before being released in June. Then it was in July of that same year when he got into an argument with his wife and ended up shooting her 3 times. She luckily survived, but afterwards, Moore turned the gun on himself and would end his own life. The reason the Angels are attached to this is Moore giving up a go-ahead home run to Dave Henderson in Game 5 of the 1986 ALCS. The Angels actually came back in the 9th, but the Red Sox scored off more in the 11th. Then they won Game 6 and 7 in Boston. There have been theories that the home run led to what Moore did, but he had been dealing with personal problems for years to that point, and the situation is different from the other Angel players who passed away. But within the first 17 years of the Angels franchise, they had 5 players on the team, or who had just left the team, pass away. From the time the Angels became a franchise and until the end of the 20th century, only one other team had more than 2 deaths, that being the Cleveland Indians with 3, all occurring in the same year of 1993, with Steve Olin and Tim Cruz passing away in a boating accident, while Cliff Young passed away in a car crash. But it's hard to attribute such tragic events to a curse that should not be trivialized. But there's more than that as far as the Angels and their very unfortunate luck. Most notably, their injuries. Obviously, every team deals with injuries, but the Angels have had some very weird and untimely injuries, with some leading to their demise. In just their second season as a franchise, pitcher Art Fowler lost sight in his left eye after being hit by a line drive in batting practice. Then later that year, Ken Hunt, who hit 25 home runs the year before, cracked his collarbone while flexing a bat behind his back in the on-deck circle. as he would never play a full season again. Then 2 years later, the Angels ace Ken McBride injured his neck and back in a car accident, and he was never the same. Then 73, the Angels star shortstop, Bobby Valentine, played a rare game in center field, and he would fracture his leg when his spikes were caught in the outfield fence, as he would also never be the same. The Angels won their first division title in 1979, and during the celebration, pitcher Jim Barr broke his hand, as they would go on to lose the ALCS to the Orioles in 4 games. They would return 3 years later, and they became the first team to blow a 2-0 lead in the ALCS after questionable decisions by Gene Mauch. They again returned 4 years later, and all-star rookie first baseman Wally Joyner would develop a staph infection in his leg, leading him to miss the final 3 games of the ALCS as the Angels blew a 3-1 lead to the Red Sox, with the Game 5 loss already mentioned. And 6 years after that, in the same year, Matt Kioff was hit in the head by a line drive in the dugout, and their coach Darren Johnson died of lung cancer. Their team bus careened off the New Jersey Turnpike, and manager Buck Rogers, along with 13 Angels players and staff, would be injured. Then 2 years after blowing an 11-game lead in August, then losing the 1-game playoff to the Mariners, all-star pitcher Chuck Finley opened the season on the DL after being hit in the eye by a flung bat. He was again sidelined when he injured his wrist after slipping while backing up home plate, and he considered doing something the Angels tried 20 years ago, which was hiring a witch doctor. Back in 1977, Dick Miller, who wrote that first article, called Louise Hebner head of the Magic Circle of 4,000 Witches nationwide, and she gave Magic Circle medals to owner Gene Autry, GM Harry Dalton, and all the players before they played the Yankees on August 3rd. And they actually won 6 games in a row, but then Hebner had a change of heart as she felt the team was insulting and did not deserve the energy of the Magic Circle, and so she put the curse back on. Similar to how Chuck Finley said that he wanted a witch doctor to burn sage in the clubhouse in 1997, but then said that he did not want to scare anyone. But there's only one real way to break a curse in sports, and it doesn't involve witches. It's by winning a title. The Angels gave a preview of what was to come in 1999 by signing Mo Vaughn to a 6-year, $80 million deal, which was the highest in the game at that point. And in his first game, on his first play, he fell down the visitor dugout steps, spraining his ankle along the way. Vaughn was not terrible for the Angels, but before 2002, he was traded to the Mets. And in his departure, closer Troy Percival said, "We will miss his bat, but we will not miss his leadership. Darren Erstad is our leader." This prompted Vaughn, who is normally mild-mannered, to go on a rant, saying, "They ain't got no flags hanging at friggin' Edison Field, so to hell with them." And comments like that, plus a local tribe blessing the ballpark before the season began, plus the rally monkey, led to the Angels pulling off an incredible 5-run comeback in Game 6 of the World Series, topped by Troy Glaus's go-ahead double in the 8th inning. Then the next night, the Angels would win their first World Series. And as expected, talk of any curse died down after that, as they had the franchise's most successful decade, 2002 being their only pennant, but they won the AL West 5 times. However, as the decade came to an end, talks of a curse came back with new events. The unfortunate cornerstone of the curse was always the tragic events. And in 2009, when after pitching 6 shutout innings that day, 22-year-old Nick Adenhart was killed by a drunk driver on the way home, along with 2 others in the car. Numerous memorials were dedicated in his honor, with the Nick Adenhart Pitcher of the Year award being established, the Angels giving Adenhart's playoff share to his family. And after this tragedy, another one of those freak injuries popped up. On May 29, 2010, cleanup hitter Kendry Morales hit a walk-off grand slam. Then when he came home to be mobbed by his teammates, he would break his leg, leading him to missing the rest of the season and all of 2011. And after that, brought what can be called the era of how are the Angels not better. That started with the Angels signing Albert Pujols before 2012, after being the best player in the game over the previous 10 years. He was set to lead the Angels back to the promised land. And more than that, 2012 saw the first full season of Mike Trout, almost topping Miguel Cabrera in MVP voting, who won the Triple Crown, as he would just miss the playoffs. And as Trout would go on to be the best player of the 2010s, they only made the playoffs once with Pujols and Trout in the lineup, that being in 2014, when before the playoffs, their top starter in Garrett Richards would injure his knee while covering first. Then they would end up being swept by the Kansas City Royals, as they have not made the playoffs since. And that's even more surprising after what happened in 2017, when they signed some guy named Shohei Ohtani. It was a risk with his desires to be a two-way player and his previous injuries, but by the end of 2021, he was the best player in the game, and something not seen in the majors in over a century. But with the best player of the 2000s, 2010s, and this decade, the Angels were unable to sniff the playoffs, as Albert Pujols would end up being released by the Angels in a contract that did not pan out how it was expected, while Mike Trout dealt with injuries amidst Ohtani's best years for the Angels, with the team around the two that was not competitive. And amidst this period, there was more tragedy. In November 2015, 2 months after his last game as a member of the Angels, 29-year-old pitcher Tommy Hanson passed away at a friend's house after falling into a coma with organ failure. Then 3 years later, 33-year-old Luis Valbuena returned to Venezuela for the Winter League, and while trying to evade robbers on the highway, he would pass away in a car crash. And 1 year after that, on July 1st, 27-year-old pitcher Tyler Skaggs was found unresponsive in his hotel room in Texas, examiners later concluding that he died of asphyxia, his death being ruled an accident, with fentanyl being the primary contributor. Numerous memorials were made in his honor, and in the Angels' first home game after his passing, with all the Angels wearing number 45, Taylor Cole and Felix Pena threw a combined no-hitter 1 day before what would have been his 28th birthday. And after that heartbreaking season, the Angels signed Anthony Rendon to a 7-year, $245 million contract. And this is already one of the worst contracts of all time. Rendon hasn't played more than 58 games in the season once, while making it known that he doesn't exactly love playing baseball, as he will miss an extended period of time in 2025 with a conveniently timed hip surgery. But there was a brief period where it seemed the Angels might be back. They had their best start in 18 years in 2022, as Reed Detmers threw a no-hitter the same night. Anthony Rendon hit a home run while batting lefty. But after a deal was killed to sell Anaheim Stadium to Artie Moreno, after Anaheim Mayor Harry Cito was caught giving confidential info to the Angels in hopes of a campaign contribution, the Angels lost 14 games in a row and would finish 16 games under 500. Then in 2023, in Ohtani's last season, as Trout and Rendon were injured again, instead of trading Ohtani and stocking up the farm system, they kept him and hoped for a miracle playoff run, which did not happen, as Ohtani would tear his UCL. Then he would leave the Angels for the other LA team, as they watched him win another MVP and the World Series in his first year. And that's where the Angels are at now. Terrible contracts, bad timing, and tragic events has led them to a spot where a lot of their money is going to injury-prone aging players, while having the worst farm system in the league, according to Fangraphs. In a spot so bad that after winning a title, fans eventually thought they were still cursed. No real reason for the curse like a trade or a particular event, it's just so much bad fortune has befallen the club that fans have figured that there's no other way. But with a fan base deserving of a winning team, Artie Moreno plans on solving this dilemma by changing the team name again and handing out a few more $250 million contracts. Hopefully you liked this video, and if so, please consider liking and subscribing for new videos every week. Thank you.